We're back with episode 2. Back like a heart attack. That's 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 about as good as that's gonna get as far as that goes. But yeah, for all the dozens and dozens and handfuls of fans, we've been
Do it
waiting
for the
for
fans.
episode 2. Yeah. Uh, this one's for you, Chet. But yeah, there's interesting. And there's been a lot of new movies coming out. It's the height of like summer season, and I think well, like, I think it'd be interesting today to talk about some of the newer movies that have come out, but also like it's free flowing as always. But it would also be good to kind of talk about what we've been going on in film. And I know you have quite a few achievements to talk about. I don't have any achievements per se, but I've got some status updates on things. So I think that the world is our oyster. So
Yeah.
where would you like to start?
Um, yeah, let's sit well, like I guess kind of do the update there on your end, and then I'll chat about the newest short film that we were working on and kind of some of the adventures there, and then we can kind of maybe go from there.
Yeah. So uh, it's funny, like yeah, not like not eh, not to be bougie or whatnot, but like going to Slam Dance this summer, it was interesting because felt like a lot of the stuff that came out of those workshops was good. Some of it I already knew, and then the other part is like it's half part self-help, right? Where like you know there's a lot of like it's going to be hard work, and more than that, it's going to be even more work than you want to do as an artistic person, right? And they just kind of nailed that home, and I think it is important to know because you're doing networking, you're doing revisions, you're trying to get budgets, you're trying to get representation so you can get into the right rooms, right? And one of the things that they just like again, it was present throughout it, and it was funny that the some of my peers that were there, it was like, I don't understand why they're not just like why they're telling us all this stuff. And to me, I kind of appreciated it because that is, I mean, it is hard. Like you and I have done a 501(c)(3) where we did a nonprofit so that we could try to band resources and
Yeah,
do that. And we did that until it got in the way of making film because
enjoy
it
the
was so
film.
much about
Yeah,
the business. And that's what we needed to do at that time. And that was not the wrong step at that time. But it's just interesting, like the obstacle is like hard work, and then it's like, no, I don't want to do that. But I bring that up because there's so many great. There's a lot of not so good ones as well. But like Slam Dance has like self-help videos and sessions you can do. A lot of them are free if you subscribe to their like News from Nowhere thing. Sundance has one on screenplay writing that's free next Thursday. It'll be over by the time we put this out, but like there's always like stuff. There's always like resources to like learn from people who have made it, and a lot of times they're talking like it's a reoccurring theme. But the guy from Slam Dance last year, I think, summed it up better than anybody I've heard so far. It was like when you get your opportunity, be ready for it. When you get your opportunity, don't fuck it up. And honestly, the third one was hit the lotto because that's that. I mean,
yeah,
that's the reality of it, right? Like you
yeah,
hear about all these people and their path to success. None of them are the same. They're not doing the same things. Like some of the journeys are similar, but like Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola and Brian De Palma are all peers, right? And they
yeah.
all make fantastic masterpiece films in different genres. But
Mhm.
out of those three specifically, like maybe very it's kind of a maybe. Like maybe Francis Ford Coppola gets his newest one, Megapolis, out, but he
Yeah.
self-financed that thing and had to sell like half of his winery to do it. Like Scorsese, like continues to, like he just has
I th-
continued to make movies.
yeah. I think he lost his ass at some point in the 80s, even before like Last Temptation or so. But like his, was it before Boxcar Bertha? Like there's a moment where he's hired on to Kiss Me Deadly or something like that, and he actually gets fired. And I've thought about that, whereas like if you and I, or you know, Matt or any of our or the colleagues, like if we got hired onto a feature film, and we would be sitting there like going like, we did it, like here we are, like we're hired for a feature film, and if 2 weeks into it we got fired, like it would be like devastating. And this is before, I think it's before Boxcar Bertha or right after that. So it's like, so like just if he'd have quit, if he'd have stopped right there, right? Like we would have lost out on all the other stuff he was going to do. But yeah, um there is that though of like these moments in time where like these guys had, as you said, like um what was it? It's like talent.
Mhm,
It's like opportunity and talent, and there's like this lotto ticket moment, right?
mhm.
Kind of thing that helps them through. But sorry.
No, I mean, and if you think about it, the journeys are similar as well. We're like, so Scorsese gets, I think, looped in with Roger Corman filmmaking, right? And
Yeah.
then he gets a shot to make Boxcar Bertha, and then I want to say, I know there's so many stories out there, but I want to say one of them is he actually gets declined as well because Roger Corman's like, you're way better than this stuff. Like, don't make these type of movies.
Yeah.
Is another similar story. Coppola makes that movie. Is it Finian's Rainbow or something with Fred Astaire,
Hmm.
and gets it taken away from him very early on in his career. Brian De Palma has, I think, Get to Know Your Rabbit with one of the Smothers brothers. Also, like, gets the movie taken away from him in the end. But they also like they kept at it and they ended up getting to make movies. And but even then, like their journeys are not the same. Like they provided feedback. I mean, allegedly, is it? I can't remember who it was, whether it was De Palma or Coppola that recommended Lucas to use the title scroll for Star Wars, right? But
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're sharing movies with each other. Like you and I've kind of done this before, where it's like, man, I watch your movie, I'm like, God, I'm jealous, and then you're like, not a stroke fest, but like you'll be like, oh, watch yours, and God, I'm jealous too. It's like, yeah, because you're working and inspiring each other.
Hmm.
Uh, but even then, once they get their chances, like it's so different that you can't replicate and like, oh, this is the way those guys did it, right?
Hmm.
It's right time, right opportunity, and making the most out of it, and then not fucking it up and getting a second chance at failure in a lot of cases and overcoming that failure, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's it was interesting, but I guess what I wanted to highlight is like there are so many resources like through like Final Draft will do stuff. I've joined a local. There's like a screenwriters guild for the Pacific Northwest, and I joined that, and they're actually
Yeah.
doing a seminar with somebody who I can't, I think she tends to be in like Final Draft. I've watched a couple of her things and participated, but there's so many people, and yeah, are they still making movies? I think in some cases they still write, but I don't know that they like. I think a lot of cases they're like ghost writers and whatnot. But at the same time, like I would kill for that opportunity too. So I don't
Hmm.
judge it, and I think there's still lots to learn from these people who have been to. They've been to. They've been to a peak. Is it Everest? No, but Everest is such a small chance for any of
Yeah.
us anyway, right? Like sometimes it's Ben Lomond for those in Utah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's Tacoma for those in Washington, and sometimes it's that hill over there. And you know what? Like you just kind of have to be ready for that moment and then build it and hope, hope that your work and your ethic speaks for itself when you get that opportunity. So I think that was just one of the things that I don't remember that we covered last time, but like it's there's so many resources to learn from professionals, and a lot of their feedback, like sometimes it hurts the ego a little bit, but it's totally valid. And sometimes like I don't feel like you and I have had this problem, but sometimes it's feedback that people need to hear. Where one of the other things that I've started seeing more and more in these blogs is they're telling people like, you want to be a screenplay writer, get your hands on screenplays that you love
Yeah.
and read them. And same with like movies, like watch those movies you love and read them. Um, the Sundance one coming up, like there, it's from the screenwriter of Coda. I haven't seen the movie, but they provide a link to the screenplay, so I'm
Hmm.
totally going to read it. And if I can, I totally will watch the movie because those things are the things that inspire me to make movies. Is when somebody else has done it, whether it's at our level, especially when it's one of the masters, right? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, not to rant and rave, but I think some of those things, like as I continue to go through the screenplay competition journey, and I applied for more this week as money has come
Hmm.
available, but it's still like sharpening the skill and still working on the craft, and I think anybody who's interested can't lose sight of that.
Hmm. No, I was doing one of the doom scrolling moments on Instagram or whatever, where I was just kind of like flipping through. I don't know what event it is. I what I do know is that it was a clip of Quentin Tarantino, and it was like he was speaking to a crowd at like a final draft event because the podium he was standing at had the final draft, like the insignia, and he was saying how he's like, oh, okay, well, how I learned how to, and I'm summing it up, but like he was saying basically that it was like how I learned how to write screenplays was to, um, I had a screenplay in my hand where he picked up one and he opened it up and he saw like the format, and that's what gave him like the idea of how to like of what the format looked like for screenplays. That being said, while I'm watching it though, I'm thinking to myself, part of me is going like fucker, like that's how I learned how to write screenplays was because I was at a bookstore. They sold Pulp Fiction with a cover at like a um maybe a Barnes and Noble. It wasn't Barnes and Noble. There used to be a Brooks and something. Anyways, bookstore in Salt Lake, and they were one of the only ones that sold uh published like screenplays. And so I bought Pulp Fiction. I still have it sitting over here, sitting next to me. I have that. I have 4 rooms. I have From Dusk Till Dawn. And they sold screenplays, and I know you have like Kevin Smith's screenplays as well.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned how to write screenplays was simply looking at what he had done in that format, and then also the in that style. And so it was interesting, like seeing that where he's going like, oh, how I learned how to write screenplays is I was reading a script, blah blah. And in my mind, I'm like, that's how I learned how to write scripts was reading his in that sense. But here nor there. But anyway, so that was that on the screenplay thing. But no, we've so so what we've been doing basically in the last year, or not last year, sorry, this last couple months is um Utah is now celebrating their 100 years in film with Utah. So
Huh.
like the first whatever movie ever shot in Utah is about 100 years ago. Um, that also coincides with if for anybody who has ever been to Ogden, Utah, our Union Station is also hitting 100 years as well. And then our Egyptian theater is also at 100 years this year as well. So there's some big milestones, and the Utah Film Commission has not hesitated to celebrate all these pieces as well. And so they wanted to put on a film festival, kind of emulating that and celebrating 100 years of film in Utah. So they partnered up with Brian Higgins, who has in the past run a lot of film festivals. We've participated in many of those over the years, Demon Chasers and Dark Christmases and things like that. So, and as it turns out, so it was going to be in Helper. So as a festival that's a 100-year celebration of Utah film, and then set in Helper, Utah. What I found out later is that obviously every city has their own film commission representative. The person who was in Helper City, Utah, happened to just write the grant the best way possible. They were able to get the grant to do the festival and to do it there. And Helper City is southeast, sorry, of Salt Lake City, almost near the Price. And it's a big art festival town as well. Used to be back in the day a big coal manor town. Um, and then for the festival, you were given there was a series of movies that we were given the and some of them might have been like 127 hours, um, SLC Punk, Forrest Gump was on the list, Con Air, um, trying to think of some of the other Utah movies. But anyways, but so we were, we were given the thing, hey, Forrest Gump biop or Con Air action, and um, my father-in-law was a stuntman in Hollywood, and he at one point worked when he moved to Utah. He worked on Con Air when they were shooting Con Air, and he's told me many times that like the plane for Con Air is still out there, and I thought he meant like way out in the desert. But as it turns out, if you go to Wendover and you're standing in the Montego like Bay parking lot, you can see still the Con Air airplane. Um, it's right there, like in that airfield, and you're still in Utah too. It's all still sitting in Utah. So it's that airfield, I guess, was also the West Wendover airfield is where when they started, they as in Americans, I guess, were when there was a practicing of like, okay, we're gonna fly the plane, we're gonna drop a bomb on, we're gonna drop the nuke. That was where they started practicing that operation. So and the plane that actually did drop the nuke is there as well. So for the history of that. So once we were given Forrest Gump and Con Air, we met up with BJ Wimpy, who I've been working with a lot lately, and then Danielle, and who's worked with us on so many other films in the past. And we just kind of over coffee, like BJ did like a Forrest Gump voice, and we thought, oh my gosh, like we should just do a hero swap. Like you should do Forrest Gump, but let's put him in Con Air, and we'll go with that idea. So we started making a parody, and then Brandy wrote. So Brandy had spent a minute, so she did the director share, but she was kind of like, if it was like a western, she was going to be like, hey, I'll just let you guys direct it. But where it was a comedy, or well, we started talking about doing a comedy, she started saying like, hey, I want to jump in on this one. And so she put together the script. It was very like Naked Gun, Hot Shots kind of thing. Very, very Zucker Brothers. Um, so we went with that. I often have said, if you don't have the bus, don't write the bus explosion kind of thing. Um, Next thing I know, like BJ and Danielle find us a bus. On top of that, Danielle reaches out to the people at the West Wendover airfield. And next thing you know, we have the plane too. So suddenly we have like the plane to shoot, the plane from Con Air, the exterior at least. Well, like it was used as it's the shell of the plane because all the interior stuff in the movie is they shot it on like a sound stage, right? But for a lot of the exterior shots, it's this like plane. It still says Jailbird, still says U.S. Marshals on it, and they got us the hookup as far as like who to contact. And when we followed up with them, they were ecstatic to actually to have us come out there. So we started changing the script. Um, a lot of it was going to all happen on a bus, and all of a sudden it changed to being on this plane. So then somehow we were able to convince everybody to drive from Ogden the Wendover so we could shoot on this plane and shoot on the actual Con Air airplane. Um, and I mean, we're down to the wire. We had after we shot, we had 2 weeks to uh, put the edit together, and it was the even that so it was due on a Monday at midnight. Even that Monday, I was still chasing down sound effects. We had a sound issue with one of the actors on the dialogue, and it wasn't like the sound file just wasn't not there. The camera that recorded it, where the person was standing, where the um, so Jesse Howell did the DP work, was like it was just really windy, so I had to run and catch up with the actor. We filmed it in a parking lot, like just recorded his audio and just to play it on top of. I mean, I was chasing down the sounds at the last minute, um, just to get it into the festival. It's um, it's a bit of a remake, it's a bit of a parody, it's a mashup of both Forrest Gump and Connor. I think it's absolutely hilarious, and it's been a lot of fun. But it certainly had its moments of like, I don't know that we've traveled so far to make just one short film. But it was a blast. Yeah,
Awesome.
just getting everybody together, and then also, I mean, fuck, you and I've done it where I don't know what the word is when you have where two people or not two people, sorry, but like where people like um hunt down film locations. And you and I've done that. You know, you and I met up in LA once, and like we went to like all these different heat filming locations, where there's certain bank robberies and the semi flip and things like that. And it kind of felt like that. It was like chasing that same thing where it was like we're chasing a filming location, but in this case we actually stop and film at that spot. And then you know how it is when you're in the trenches with the location or with anybody. There's a kind of a it starts to get kind of personal and things, and so there's almost a moment there where it became like it was our home. So we went back the next morning, do some pickup shots, and it just felt like, yeah, this is the place where you sit your sandwich down or you grab your coffee or something like that. Like it just felt palatable in a sense, but even though it's not ours to own, but I don't know, it was really cool. So anyway, so we went to last weekend, we were at Helper City. They had the film festival there, and they did a screening on Friday. They did two screenings on Saturday, and we ended up coming home with one of the top three awards. So they did have a best picture, that they had a best of fest, but the other third top film choice was going to be the best use of theme, which is taking all the elements you were provided to make best movie. In that case, it was us, and so we won best of theme. Um, and because we were one of the films, we're probably the only film that actually really. There's some other films that did kind of like a like High School Musical was filmed in Utah, and that was like their one line of dialogue like justified their entire film. In our case, because we made a parody, we actually shot on location. Um, we were the only film that actually kind of really did that. The West Wendover Airport is used in Con Air, plus that plane. The in Con Air where like Steve Buscemi's character is like hanging out with this little girl at a swimming pool kind of area. We shot the swimming pool. And then also in Ogden, Utah, the Ogden Airport, some scenes from Con Air were shot there, so we shot there as well. So it was kind of a mixed bag of things, but it was a blast. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So
Awesome. I didn't film but I was on film locations last week too. So I was in Oregon on vacation at an undisclosed location. But during my vacation, like there, I was like, we want to go to this beach and go hiking. I went, that's cool. I really want to go to Ecola State Park and go hiking. I've been there before. It's a rad, it's a rad area. If you've never been, like it's beautiful. You can see Haystack Rock. It's a little bit of a journey as far as hiking. It's about I think 2.5, 3 miles to hike it one way. But what's cool about it and why it's in film is you start off um, on one end of it, you're like looking over the bluffs and whatnot. And it's where they filmed the carnival scene in Kindergarten Cop, because they filmed a lot of it up in the Astoria area and up in there. But so it's like the bluff, like overseeing the ocean, and they filmed that there. I am pretty sure they filmed the Goonies there because you got the rock formations and whatnot as well, and Haystack Rock in the background. But my favorite part is like once you hike to the other side of that and you get to Indian Beach, there's a bridge. It's like a wooden bridge over there. That's from one of my favorite movies. And then the beach itself is featured as Australia in Point Break. So,
Like the
like,
ending of Point Break, right?
yeah, yeah, when they're in Australia,
Yeah.
it's Oregon, and and yeah, they're on that. They're coming across that wooden bridge, and he's like, "What's it like out there?" And the guy has that really terrible Australian accent. He's in a bunch of like '90s movies. His character, he's like, "Death on a stick out there, mate. Don't go." And yes, they have that bridge there, and then there's and then out on the beach itself, you can see like the rock formations in the background. I've paused it. I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like I've stood. I mean, they're using a better camera and 50 millimeter lens and all that shit. So, like, I don't know the exact spot, but I was like, man, Patrick Swayze occupied this space with Keanu Reeves, like, you know, 40 years ago. So,
Utah.
yeah, you
Down
can
to
tell.
Utah.
Yeah, you can tell because I'm here. But yeah, even on vacation, like the movie location hunt continues. Actually, yeah. So got to go see some Point Break, and I mean, Short Circuit was filmed up in that area. Like, it's interesting. It's an interesting part of Oregon. It's beautiful up there. But yeah, film locations are everywhere. It's cool that you got to film on. You actually got to film on them. I was just haunting them while these other people were playing with frisbees, actually, there's a lot of surfers out there too. I was like, sons of bitches can do something I'll never be able to do. Surf and change your life, bro. Like, so yeah, that's rad.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations on the award and awesome film. Like, I hope you can somehow sneak it to me on the DL so I can see it and then report back.
Yeah, we're I don't know, we're looking to push like an online premiere in a couple weeks. Like there's still some sound stuff. I mean, that we need to figure out. Like we were down to the wire on submitting it. Um it was like it's due at midnight, and even at like 10 o'clock, I was looking at Brandy and I was like, it is it at this point it is credits, and it's credits only. Like that's what we gotta do now because we have to type that up and do the export um for it. Um but and there there's also moments where we've done this before in the past, and oftentimes we've had Madison with us, and so like to do where we shoot almost without sound kind of thing, like, and she's been so good about um oftentimes like we'll just kind of run and gun. I call it now run and gun for fun. Like you shoot it, you don't look for the sound, but then later your past self has to like account for what you or your future self now has to make amends for what your past self said, where it was like, we're not going to shoot sound. So there's a lot of Foley work that need to be done. And for the first times, as far as the score, there's a guy by Joshua Song, and he's done. If I said his last name correctly, he's done the score for a couple of the 48-hour films that we did with Nick Smith and Lucas Hardy, and Randy reached out to him and was like, hey, like, a little gump themey, but also when it comes to the action stuff, like that guitar sound, that just that hit, that racer kind of like guitar hit that you hear. And he understood the assignment fully, and so the score is just spot on. Uh,
It's awesome.
so it really is a magnificent effort overall. But that all being said, my short film, Frankencock, is pushing along. Like, I actually have like 4 festivals that I'm in, the movie's in, coming up. Um, and there's, now that we're into the end of summer, like there's a lot of festivals that are gonna be giving me either rejections or acceptance, and crossing fingers that we end up in the Kevin Smith one. So
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
um, so we're hitting there, and then uh, like you just trying to plug away at times on the writing, and trying to get our scripts out, kind of thing. So
It's awesome. Yeah, it's scripting. I need to I need to submit to American Zoetrope script fest or competition before I think the deadline's the end of this month. And since I have a new feature, I want to. The thing is, like, it has very set parameters on it where it has to be like it can't have your name on the screen, which isn't a hard thing except for when you have your PDF and everything is set up that way, and you have to boot up your computer or your iPad to do it. Again, not hard work. You just need to make the time to do it, and that's a good
yeah.
reminder to. Now I've told you, and the dozens, including you, Chad. I know you're out there listening. Uh, um, now I want to get that in there because I mean some of these opportunities, like there's so many out there, and in fact, again, I hope it's helpful for anybody who's listening and truly interested in making stuff. There are a lot of festivals that'll offer you discounts and competitions that'll offer you discounts and whatnot. And sometimes it can feel like a deal, but don't go broke doing it either. It's my recommendation. There are so many festivals, and truly like making a polished piece of work and then submitting it to the right competitions is also a good way to do it. Like those festivals tend to have um, industry, industry people on the panels, and that part of their allure is we're bigger. If you make it to the semifinals or the finalists and whatnot, you're going to be read by actual like. And no, like one of them was like, one of them was like Paul Schrader. Like nobody said yes, but potentially, like he looked at the first 2 pages and went, "I wish he wrote better," and then moved on, and at least he touched the script. But yeah, there's, yeah, I felt I've felt very fortunate with the screenplay thing in the last couple of years. Like I got rejected a lot, but when you break it down, I think it was damn near 50% or maybe 40% of the time I got either selected or got a prize or an honorary, like I was quarterfinalist a bunch of times, semifinalist. I won a bunch of things, and one of the one of the things I've learned in the last couple of years of going to slam dance is like if you make it to quarterfinalist and final, like if you make it into those semifinalist, quarterfinalist pools, especially in a bigger competition, potentially people who are reading for production companies or literary managers or talent managers and whatnot, they will have touched and potentially read your script. So even if you don't win, like the chance, like there are chances if it depending on how big it is, if it's smaller,
Yeah.
like you run that risk, but you still if you feel like it's a good festival or competition that you can go network at and meet other people, like by all means do it. But just know that there are festivals and sometimes in competitions where it may seem out of reach, but even if you get close to the top, you still have somewhat of a chance. And that's for those who sit on their
Hmm.
thumbs and hands and never type out a word because they're afraid of that rejection. You're going to get a hell of a lot closer than any of them ever get. And it's unfortunate to say that we both know
Yeah.
really talented people fall into that category, which is a damn shame.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
The doing is the thing, right? Like it's
Yeah.
there was a time where you and I were sitting in my parents' basement when we were just out of high school talking about how we wanted to make film, and we were writing scripts and talking about them and talking about how we were going to shoot stuff. And damn it, if we ever did, and we went off to college, learned how to be men, and hone our craft and our talents, and then we actually did the thing and started making films. And is
Hmm.
everyone a masterpiece? Yeah, especially all the ones I made and wrote. But I, it's the learning of a thing, Like,
Hmm.
God, how many times did we fail on some of those? Like you talk about filming without sound. I mean, I think about, oh man, I'm gonna say it on here so I can hold myself better accountable. Like, there's a film we made and put into one of Brian Higgins' festivals for Demon Chaser called "Tell You So," and like that also was like we kind of switched ideas. We filmed it last minute and lost track of the time on when the film was due. Ended up it almost became like a 48-hour film for us. I ran into a bunch of problems with the edit to the point where like we had some corruption in the video files, which we still have unfortunately. And then there were some sound bites that were missing because it didn't have it. In fact, like we didn't even have credits either because it was just like pa- passable. And the film worked for what it was. Like, it didn't have credits, but it worked. And I mean, like, we got the best scare of the fest. Like, like uh, not everybody that goes to that festival gets awards, and honestly, like we had a lot of great stuff in that film, a lot of great gags. Like like we brought back a reoccurring mime gag from our short films, and Ryan it killed the mime the first time, and then this film, like Ryan killed it even more creative with a invisible noose, and it's still one of
Yeah.
my favorite things to watch as I've edited and to see and laugh with people in an audience with. So yeah, you just get better. And there was a lot of failing in that project. There was success in it too. And at the end of the day, like um, I wish procrastination, the pandemic, and like corruption files didn't sap my enthusiasm for finishing that project because I still love it. But that's the nature of it at times. Like hell, we can film
Mhm.
entire films that were never completed. Not to point fingers at any other people, but like sometimes like because other people weren't able to follow through or out of respect for other people's wishes. Like we had a film where we cast an actor that's a very close friend of ours, and I won't say names. At the end of the day, they weren't comfortable with their performance, and we ended up not um, putting together the film because it was a fun exercise, and the way it was on the page was a lot of fun, and it's just one of those things. Like sometimes, like it's a lot better on the page, and you're not able to pull it off with your budget. And
Hmm.
I think that one was one of them. And another one we filmed on what DV. I can't remember what was the problem with the was the one we filmed with Mike and Emline and Rod and whatnot. Like can't quite remember what happened. I know we filmed it on DV tape, which was like half the issue, and then somebody else was going to edit it, and then
It's called
nobody.
The Hold.
Yeah,
Um, and it wasn't my script, and it was the script was handed to us, and we were in those. I mean, we should just always be frank here, I guess. It was in our Peter days. Um, and so, uh, what happened there, also, my previous wife hated anytime I went to edit anything. Um, anytime, because editing takes a very long time. And so she's the crazy maker around just editing and constantly kind of, I mean, fuck, there's one time you and I were editing, I think your second short film, Connected, which we shot at what is now the Funkin' Dive, but at the time it was called the Wine Cellar. And you and I were shooting it, and and my then wife, she would just walk into the room while you and I were editing, and she'd just be like, "Oh, this is going on now. The internet is out. This and that." And I was like, "Okay, well, it's not my like we were living at my in-laws, and so I was like, well, it's not my really my problem if the internet's out. I don't need the internet right now, actually, for you and I to edit." And she came back, and then she's like, "Well, this and that," and I even told you I was like she's fucking with us. Like she's wanting me to go fix this even though it's not my house, it's not my internet, it's not my satellite to fix whether or not the TV works. Like you and I are editing a film. Um, so we shot the to hold, and she just didn't want me to edit, and I had passed it off to a few other people. Emmeline was one of them. She's an actor in the film. They talked about editing the movie themselves. I ended up actually giving her the tapes at one point, so I don't have a digital copy of it because it was on DV tape, mini DV tape. So that movie is gone and in that person's hands, and I don't. We, it's sad because there was a lot of effort put there. There's a lot of hours on the weekend, um, but it's never gonna see the. We have the photos of what we did. I don't think it's gonna be ever coming out.
oh,
But
we got to learn a lot on that project. We had a lot of fun. Uh, I mean that was one of the things too. Like we it was one of the few times that we worked on somebody else's words on the page rather than what you and I specifically wrote to film too. It was a good learning exercise, and it's always interesting how people respond with somebody else adapting their work. Like
yeah.
I'd lie if I said that I didn't have problems with it anytime I've handed anything off because I can see like, oh, I would do this different or I would do that different. At the end of the day, like if I feel that way strongly enough, then I should go make it myself. Then
Hmm.
like nothing's stopping. Like there's no reason there can't be two versions of to hold. Just to use that
Yeah.
title as an example. Like at our level, like if it really needs to do it, but it also, the other part of that is like I could do that, but we've already done that thing, and it would be better to learn while making a new project, right? Not
Hmm.
retreading the same, like go off, learn something else, and enjoy doing it. I think of again like this episode's not to talk about the failures of abandoned projects, but there was one point where I went to film yet another short film I'd written, and it was actually like kind of what got me into writing film. I'd taken a class on Eugene O'Neill and had gotten into stage writing, and I went, oh, okay, I can adapt this. And it was called The Death of a Thing. And I, man, I really wanted to film it because part of my master's program, we had the option to either write about Eugene O'Neill or we could do a play in the style of Eugene O'Neill. And I opted for the latter. And everybody in the class read my work out loud while I sat there, and that was probably one of the most uncomfortable things I'd ever had to deal with. They read it out loud, and like just the pacing of it and the thing that they would, and I was like, man, I watched. It's not. I watched people crying. I cried. Like it was just so emotional and powerful. But by the time we got around to filming it, I had done so many pieces in that vein, and then we ran into obstacles with an actor who was being a bit combative after we'd cast,
Hmm.
and at the time I was like, you know what? I love the actors that I've cast in it, but I've kind of already done this to death, and I need to
Hmm.
learn something new, and started moving away from like, human drama pieces into more of the realm of like something that we could film on a level and have fun with it. I could like make something with more production value, and we started falling more into
Hmm.
horror. Out of fun. There's so many more opportunities for like the visual gags that we've done.
Yeah.
Like there's homages to like almost like that Three Stooges slapstick type stuff at times. We referenced like Jurassic Park. Used a dolly, like a literal like hand truck dolly to move things around to give it like things
Mhm.
like a spiritual like a Sam Raimi style like floating camera. There's just done so many fun
Oh,
things that there's more opportunity with in like a horror film.
yeah. I was even thinking the other day about like I remember a time where it was snowing in Utah and you and I were outside in your driveway constructing out of plywood and PVC pipe like the a dolly track that we could use. And it was actually for your first short film because we wanted a dolly for that. And then it's kind of a motif for a second because your second short film we did a dolly as well.
Yeah.
But also using like this like PVC um, and plywood like construction that we had done. Um, one of the things what's interesting when I think when you and I look at our work, our earlier works in our short films, there's a lot of like you just mentioned the Eugene O'Neill. We're trying to be very dramatic. We're trying to be very serious, and the story that you're talking about as a the one that you didn't film has an extremely serious scenario in it. What's funny is that, sorry, what I think is funny is that like we eventually moved on to horror comedy, and what I think is interesting is once we go into that realm, and when I share like the stuff that I've done in the Ancient Evil series, what I think is it's like well, but in this genre, like there are no morals, and I can basically do it's almost like the gloves are off. Um, because there's no morality with the characters, and thus anybody is subject to being killed, and that includes women and children, like protected classes of things when you're watching a movie. Not protected classes in society, but protected classes in films. Whereas a movie might say, you might go like, oh well, there's a dog. Dog's not going to die. But then in our films, like, oh, that dog's going to die. Like if you see a baby or a child or a dog, or like there's a motif for a while that was a pregnant woman, and we used to do these things as like a dramatic effect. But then it's almost like, but if we just change the gear a little bit and go into horror, make it horror comedy, it's even better. I get to do the same thing, but I get a different reaction and one that what instead of being like it's almost like coming out of college. I feel like those years. um, you just were graduating. I was just graduating, and everything was just drama.
Yeah.
And it was everything was supposed to be the way the drama was supposed to be, and so we're pushing out just that. It was like, and yet it's not universal, not universal. It's not commercial, popular, whatever. But then if we just take those same concepts, like husband and wife getting a breakup, and you just yank it just a little bit, um, because maybe the husband and wife going to break up because they're having marital problems about their children. You just twist it a little bit with a horror thingy, and then suddenly it's comedy, and we can kill and do whatever we want to that point.
Well,
Not to stick us in that genre, but I think it's interesting that we eventually both went down that road of like, because even Ancient Evil, the one that you directed, is there. I mean, there's gimmicks, right? There's comedy gimmicks
oh,
in
well,
it, right? So.
I think part of it too is like, especially early on, like, I mean, we were just graduating for college, so there wasn't the most money in the world. And to be fair, at this level, you're paying to make film. So when we talk about making your budget, your aesthetic, like, yeah, it is not hard to write a drama piece and get people to act with each other, right? And it doesn't cost a ton of money either. Like, we've used my we've used my houses through the years for God, just about any of the stuff that
Mhm.
we did. We used friends' houses for in apartments, like, and it was because it was easy, and you didn't have we didn't have to worry about coordinating some of those things like explosions or bloodbaths or whatever. Although we got to the point where we did have a lot of fun with doing that later. Not explosions as much per se, but like bloodbaths and whatnot later
Mhm.
on down the road. But like that was where our budget was, and that's what we filmed. And then like we started branching. I feel like what happened was we were like, you know what, we can do more than we are, and we can be creative about it. And we just need to we have to think differently. So, for example, like one of the things, like it was an extension of what we were doing at the time. I wanted to make a dark drama. There's a film that I directed and wrote called Provocation, where the guy comes home and finds his wife cheating on him. So then he goes and hangs
Mhm.
out, and then he like wrestles with the emotions of it, and then like sees a hammer, and then yeah, it goes hard, goes ham, kills her, and the dude she's with, and like at the time, like we were like, wow. You and I even talked about it for a long time. I was like, how the fuck are we gonna do like the bloodbath? Because we just wanted it to be like the aesthetic and the what we tried to pull off was like that like flash frame of like in From Dusk Till Dawn, where there's just like blood in the room, and we wanted the blood in
Yeah.
the room, right? So how do we do that? Well, shit, we took butcher paper and white paper and then pasted it all over those goddamn walls.
Uh-huh.
Put plastic painter sheeting down, and then also like rubber sheets, I think, on the bed. And then just were really careful, and then had like put blood all over that fucking room. And then once we filmed like the money shot, we dressed up the room with even more blood and gore and fun stuff. And got done. It's like, huh, we can we can do a blood room. Like never done that before. Like, all right, cool. Had the great we had a dolly shot that was a lot of fun in that. Hell, we even did like really harsh like film noir lighting with like the blinds, if you remember. Like we had
Hmm.
a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And later on we used that same apartment and dress it up as a New York City apartment for, you'll have to
Mhm.
forgive me, I can't remember
It was Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning.
Um, was it? But years later, we would when we shot my feature film, Married and Loving It. There's a part where the woman castrates the man, and And there's many times where you and I we spoke about how like all of what we're doing in short film stuff is like practicing for the big show. And that was a day where we're shooting at a friend's house. We're shooting at Justin's house. He's actually not there. He went golfing, probably for the best. He's even said he's like if I knew how much blood you guys were gonna do, probably would have freaked out. But I just knew ahead of time because we'd done so much blood on your film that you were just mentioning, like what we needed, and so we set up plastic where we could. But at the moment it was came to for her to cut and stab the guy, we just blanketed blood on her. And there was a moment where we were picking up all the plastic we could, and it was all over the ceiling. And but we'd done blood stuff before in someone's house where we actually have to clean it all up after we do it. So um, much like the butcher paper, wall scenario with your short. So yeah,
Yeah, those were, I mean, you get more creative as time goes on, right?
yeah,
You learn from those. You start with what you can film, and I don't think to our detriment, but I think we did a good job about like what can we film in our budget, and we start like I tried to do a spy movie and play with different timelines that I knew didn't require a ton of money, and we still did other locations, and then most of the budget went to feeding people. Hell, we even used a gun in live rounds. Not that we advocate for, well, not that I advocate for that, but at the
yeah.
time, like we did use a gun in live rounds. We used, we had one person that was in charge of the pistol, and the only time we had live rounds in it was when we did the really close up shot, and so it was just cameraman, director,
Hmm.
and the armorer, and then as soon as it was done, we cleared the gun and had the gun pulled off set. But I mean, we were as responsible as we could be, and we cleared everybody off set, and then everybody was like, "Oh, there's gun," and so they wanted to be there. And
Yeah.
God, yeah, there's a level of danger with that, but with that level of interest, right? So everybody wants to see that. But
Hmm.
we filmed it safe, and we filmed, anything that we filmed, like we had airsoft pistols we used for, 99% of the shots. It's just the close up when we rack the round in. We did a close up on
Hmm.
a round, and I want to say in the movie it was I want to say in the final film it's a woman holding the pistol, but I think it's your hand that's actually in the close up, or maybe it's Kim's hand in the close up. There's somebody. It was like we wanted to control the scenario so we were safe as possible with it. Um,
Is
but
this your short film, the spy one?
yeah, yeah, first date.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's your hand, but yeah,
It could be. I mean, it could like
I
it's
haven't seen it in a
close.
minute, so yeah.
It's close up, so
Gonna
nobody's.
revisit. Go to New York Cinema,
Yeah,
YouTube, pull it first day.
when you when you hit subscribe because you've enjoyed this video so much,
Yeah.
and you've talked to all your friends about it, you can go through the playlist on the channel too, because there's all the rest of the great shit in there. But I mean, we wanted to make it bigger, right? And even making it like human
Mm.
drama ish. Like we had like small moments that were like we didn't just go like, "Hey guys, we got a gun!" Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Everybody,
Hmm.
come take a look. We're responsible with it, and we did things that were responsible with it, and we made it. And then for the rest of the time, it was like $20 airsoft pistols. That God, all of those things are molded to look like real weapons, right? Because
Hmm.
that's what they all do, and we spray painted them. Uh, I mean, but we just kept getting bigger and bigger to the point where like then we're making films with like giant talking dick puppets, and also like like a 7 or 8 kill like spree, not quite one take, but almost, where like you end up killing what I think it's like 7 people in the span of a minute and a half, and you like you're grabbing all these staged weapons, and then out of nowhere, like we have the great idea. I'm just gonna roll the bat out to you at an angle that flies through the air like a propeller, and you grab it, and then start beating somebody to death with it. And like we just got we just had so much fun with it, and I think that part of
Mhm.
it comes from like the want to replicate like one take shots that we'd seen in other films, and
Mhm.
definitely an homage to other films. And again, it goes back to like you want to write screenplays, you read screenplays, and you read screenplays for what you want to write. You
Mhm.
want to make films, you watch
Yeah.
films, and you watch films that are going to play into
Mhm.
your aesthetics and what you
Mhm.
want to create, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do so you saw I saw Alien, and I'll kind of I won't spoil anything. I feel the same about Wolverine and Deadpool. I think we've both seen that. Like,
Yeah.
and I'll be honest, I saw it 2 weeks after release, so damn near everything in that movie was spoiled for me. And out of respect for anybody who may or may not have seen it, I won't. I don't want to spoil anything if
Yeah.
you magically dodge the bullet that is the internet for that one. But um, I won't lie. Like, I I had a lot of fun in that movie. I mean, it definitely like having been a comic book fan, like God, I had comics before, like from three on, too many comics really, but like comic nerds, a lot of that stuff, like all the little, all the little like teasers in there, like a lot of that stuff is resonates even more with me probably in some ways
Mhm.
than it does you. But I love to visually how there's so much of love of other films and of even making fun of it. I feel at times it got
I'll say when Jason says, um, the when you say that comment, like as it does to me, because what we know is that you've read a lot more comic books than I have, and I'm more just a movie person. So everybody, so I have so like when there's the montage in the beginning that is all the like Logan variations and whatnot of different comic book stuff. I see it as an aftermath, and part of me is going like, I think I've seen that image before, but like not. I didn't read the whole comic, and I think that
yeah
you read the comics, so you get it. And I just kind of go like, "Oh, cool! Deadpool's a cool character." But you're like, "No, I remember Deadpool in the comic books where he like does all these other things." And so that's the the difference between
yeah
when we say like why you got it and I didn't get it, kind of thing.
yeah. I mean I had a lot. How about this? I think when you watch that movie, it looks like everybody that was on that set had a lot of fun making
Hmm.
that movie, and that translates to the screen. Like it feels like they had a lot of fun, and there's a lot of fun to be had in that movie. It's not perfect. I feel like sometimes like is too meta and too on the nose, like
Yeah.
throughout. Like, and I still enjoy the movie. I'm not. I don't want to be the guy that's like I hate like everything about like all these movies. I like a movie when I can turn off my brain and go see a popcorn movie, turn off my brain and just have fun. And I had fun with that movie. There's plenty of things that like if somebody gave me the keys to the kingdom, I would have done differently. But for the most part, I I enjoyed myself. If you haven't seen it yet and you've dodged it, there's a lot in that movie that they don't show in the trailers that's worth watching. Uh, there are cameos throughout that whole thing. I know they give some away in the trailer, but some of the cameos, like sweet Jesus, like even for me, again, I'm not gonna say which ones, but like I don't know if they resonated with you as much because like for me, like some characters, I grew up reading comics and watching the cartoon show in the '90s as a kid and playing video games, and I'm like, why can't this character ever make it in? And then later on down the road, it's almost like what happened to Deadpool in Wolverine Origins, where everybody was like, "We want to see Deadpool on the big screen," and then they show up, and Ryan Reynolds is in Wolverine Origins, never wears the fucking suit, has
Yeah.
his face out, and at the end is like this atrocity that has nothing to do with the
Hmm.
character, and people are like, "What the fuck is this?" So in some ways, like I felt like that I would never get a certain character, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I like how much fun they poked at it, and because I know all of the turmoil of getting some of these movies made, like the jokes hit
Hmm.
harder with me than like my wife, for example, who was sitting next to me, like going, "Man, it's kind of funny. I don't know why you're laughing like that." I'm like, you just, like if you don't have the knowledge of certain pop culture things, like it won't resonate. But if you do,
Yeah.
it's even better.
Yeah. Well, I saw it like the Tuesday after the Friday, and I was like, hey, at this point, I just want to see the movie. The internet's already kind of spoiling it as we go.
Yeah.
Certain actors who were in previous uh, late 90s Marvel movies were already posting that they were like back and whatnot. And I was like, okay, like I'm wanting to see this film before it gets too much spoiled. Um, there's a moment in the movie where it's right before the Madonna song kicks in. Um, and we already know from the trailers like Wolverine's wearing like his the classic yellow kind of thing, but there's an added moment, a little bit of something that he adds to the costume, and I audibly said "fuck yeah" like, while I was watching it. What while I was sitting there, I was like, and then my wife Brandy, she looked at me, she's like, did you just say "fuck yeah"? And I'm like, "Fucking Ed," and like, and then the whole thing plays out, but um, what she does, where is it? I have some fucking X-Men playing cards right here from when I was a kid. Fucking sitting next to me right now. Anyways, and so like that, but that was just like, yeah, but like you don't understand like how I remember back in the early '90s when there was like rumored there was gonna be like Van Damme or Steven Seagal or somebody like that was gonna play Wolverine, and they eventually made an X-Men movie, and it was this guy. Who the fuck knew who Jackman was at the time? And then as time's gone on, all the way up to this point, and of course they, for whatever reasons, um, did not do colorful outfits, and now here we are. We actually get to see not only him in like the classic colors, but also in other variations, and then to also do another. It's like yeah, it's like 30 years, like you can only wait so goddamn long. And they'll tease it, and like I think it was like the second Wolverine movie where it like opens up the little drawer and it just has like it has the orange and maroon costume, but he doesn't wear it. And for some reason, it's like they never made that transition into just doing that. But I think that part of Deadpool and Wolverine and its success is that like it a lot of fanfare. I will also say like I wasn't the biggest fan of the story. Um,
Yeah.
and there's moments where like when Wolverine says when I don't know what it is, but when Hugh Jackman says the F word, it just sounds kind of like forced instead of like natural. It doesn't sound the same way that like Joe Pesci would say it or like De Niro would say it and kind of a thing. So like I mean I get the let's fucking go, but yeah, I felt that way even during Logan. There was moments where Patrick Stewart's like saying it and it's like why is Xavier saying the F word? Of the F word, but like it just seems weird coming out of his I don't know, because maybe the way they set it up or something like that. Like we had this one
It's
where
probably
go ahead.
dialect coaches too. Like you think about
Yeah.
like Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman are both like they have that you know they have a different version of English that they're used to saying
Oh
and
yeah,
they're
that's true.
having to act, and
Yeah.
then it's probably just a uh I think you've been to Dublin, right? Yeah, you went over to Dublin
Yeah.
at one point. It's
Yeah.
like instead of like fucking, it's like fecking. with an
Yeah.
E, you know what I mean? And could be
Yeah.
like something, it could be something like that. Like, I don't know, I kind of like walking around my house saying decking in times and yeah. But I hear what you're saying. I think too, like after you and I've talked about it too, like sometimes you take for granted your experiences, like when you go into stuff like this. And probably is, my wife probably feels this just as much as you, if not more, where like she missed out on a lot of pop culture in the 90s when she was growing up Amish and churning butter. She didn't really. She grew up a cattle ranch, and at one point the TV broke, and then they fixed it. So like, there's a whole like swath of like 8 years in the 90s that my wife kind of missed out on. And like when I reference things, like even like she's like, I don't know who Macho Man Randy Savage was. I was like, that is interesting to me
Really?
because for like a decade and a half, like if you turned on to any commercial or walked into any gas
Stop it, Slim
station,
Jim.
be like, need a little excitement? Yeah. Try the Slim Jim with all its beefy flavors. Yeah. Uh-huh. And that's exactly that's where he was. Like he was everywhere. Like even if you didn't watch wrestling, like that dude was in fucking gas stations. Target had stands. Like just I mean, hell, he shows up in goddamn Spider-Man at one point.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah. And so, like, when we were talking about it, she's like, "What in the fuck are you talking about, Macho Man Randy Savage?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about because, like, this guy, like,
When you say
this
you don't
guy was
know,
like the
I don't know what you're
Kool-Aid
talking
man in the '90s and early 2000s. Like, we all like think of Slim Jim and immediately go like, "Oh yeah!" Like that's.
about.
In fact, Oregon, by the way, is a place almost out of time. Like I walked into a VHS rental store
Oh
in
wow.
Oregon, and I won't lie, I walked in there on purpose and bought some stuff because I spent my entire childhood in one of those things. But as we were wandering around, like I was in a grocery store out there. I'm walking to check out. I turn and look, and Macho Man Randy Savage is on the Slim Jim box. Still in this day in
What?
2024, there's like Macho Man Randy Savage on the Slim Jim box, and I went, my kids need those, so I bought three of them. I don't eat beef, but I bought them for my kids, and it's because that asshole. Rest in power, Randy. Rest in power. But I, I mean, I watch this. I bring it back around. Like, there's so much in Wolverine and Deadpool. Like, yeah, I mean, you kind of have to have like Marvel film history, and it has to also predate Iron Man. Like, there are so
You have
many
to have a
like,
20th Century Fox like film history,
yeah, yeah,
like 20th Century Fox like Marvel stuff. And
yeah,
my wife also missed that part. I don't think she got any of the Fantastic Four like half references. Electra, fuck. I mean, they even made an electric film, like not
yeah.
just the Daredevil one with Ben Affleck, but like they even made the electric film. Plus, like I- back when it was just Blade, it was just him. But man, sorry, go ahead. You were
No, no. I'm just if you don't
yeah.
have if you don't have like a knowledge of these things, like you might walk out of that movie and go, "What the fuck?" But at the same time, the movie's making enough money. I don't think anybody's worried about that. They're kind of making it. I think
Yeah.
they made that movie to have fun and poke fun at both like where Marvel has been and where it's at now. And I'll say this: like, if the future of Marvel should be blended, like they should take risks with more like adult fare like in this movie. Like it doesn't
Uh,
need to feel as forced as this movie does at times, but like Deadpool proved that you can make it. There's other like R-rated franchises. Like they keep talking about making a Blade remake. And you know what? Like it would be really hard to see that movie as PG-13. Like, could they make it?
mhm.
Sure. Could they make it good? maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I feel like to serve that character and where it lives, like where we've seen them, um, it would be really hard to do a PG-13 Blade when even in the realm of like you watch Avengers movies and they're waxing people left and right, especially like Infinity War and Endgame and where they're going
Uh-huh.
through and killing all these creatures. Like I guess you'd get away and say, oh, but they're killing vampires. But at the end of the day, like you're gonna be stabbing something into their hearts, and cutting the heads
Uh-huh.
off and whatnot. And if you try to get away with doing something like that, PG-13, just take a fucking chance. To quote George
Yeah.
Carlin, like
Well,
make
it's
it
interesting
fun, make it true to the character.
in our time, and we hit on the last episode, and I think we'll probably continue to hit on it even more. Is that like there was a time in the 80s where everything was rated R, and they would just sell the toys to kids and lunchboxes to kids, and then somewhere in the late 2000 or late 90s, early 2000s, everything became PG-13 because I think the economics was is that you could sell more tickets, and it probably was not even thought process. You probably did sell more tickets, kind of thing going on. So this is past the Blade movie. So Blade came out as rated R, and I think it crushed in the box office. Um, then there was by the time they get to Logan, or not Logan, sorry, but like the first Deadpool, like Deadpool was like came out as rated R and kind of reminded an audience or maybe even the studio heads that like, hey, like you can do a rated R comic book movie and it will kill. Uh, as far as box office numbers. So then like Logan and then Batman versus Superman all then suddenly had like these like rated R versions to them. Or like Logan was gonna be like, oh, we're gonna make it rated R now. For the like the adult audience. And it's like, I don't know that an audience ever really left because like Blade 2, and maybe even Trinity were all rated R. Um, but uh that's my only criticism. And then to like Logan where it's like it feels like the forced F word. But Deadpool's continued to be rated R then ever since. And do I think that the next Avengers movie needs to be rated R? No, but I think that whatever heart and spirit they put into Logan, or not Logan, sorry, Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine is the same they need to put into whatever they're doing next. Because I think that there's some point that got kind of like lost. There is, of course, like some sort of fanfare where it's like, okay, cool, I get to see these characters finally on the big screen. I'm happy that they're there, and that kind of like services like whatever need I had. But there is, I think, after like so many renditions of that, you kind of get to a point where it's like, okay, but the characters to do at least something, then then it's just kind of a boring movie. And in this case, like it not only did it served a lot of built up need for the audience around the Wolverine character, but and again, I'm not a big fan of the story, but at least it had something in a sense,
Yeah.
and it was poking fun of itself at the same time, even if Black Story, or even Hugh Jackman's like divorce or whatever the hell, right? Compared to like take a movie like Eternals. Like I'm the director, I believe, for Eternals won the Academy Award for directing, but I didn't see the movie though. I didn't see that one, or I didn't see Eternals
Who
or
directed
the movie.
Eternals?
Well, there you go. I guess that makes my point
Yeah.
too. Is like, but like we get to, I don't know. I,
I mean,
there's a lot of talk sometimes about like whether or not comic book movies are getting old or whatever. I think that it's a genre that's like we've seen before. There's a time where there was westerns. There was a time where there was war films. And we've hit the age of like the comic book movies. I just think that they got to a point where it was like any genre, like if you got to continue to make them like good movies though.
yeah. Well, the other thing is too is like PG-13 versus rated R. Like I mean, know the story you're telling, and then that's where you should live. Like, and take it again, take a fucking chance on it. Like you thought. you look at some of these movies, like, okay, and again, like, I'll be honest, some of these I did enjoy, but I watched them with kids, my children specifically, not other people's children, but I watched them with my kids, and then they have a lower threshold of what's entertaining and what's good, and that's good. That's some in some ways that's the way it should be. They should have a fun look at the world, right? It shouldn't always be serious. There's plenty of times to show them Russian literature and show them how fucked the world is. But until then, like we got out of Ant-Man and Wasp, and they're like, "Yeah, Quantum Mania, this is good." Blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, I liked watching it with you guys. Like, but did I like the movie? Like, so it's got moments, but no, not really. I like
And
watching it with my kids. The memory
yeah,
of watching it with my kids is more important to me than the memory of that movie specifically. But I
yeah,
think that speaks to like, I mean, they made that movie for a fuck ton of money, right? And it did not recover its money, but it's PG-13. Like their logic should have saved that movie, but it
hmm
didn't. And yet here we are, like you have Deadpool versus Wolverine. I haven't seen how Alien Romulus is doing, but I saw it in a pretty packed theater, and I would imagine it's doing
the they did
doing pretty good.
and which was which was like better than what they expected. So
Yeah, that for those who are interested, and again, I won't spoil anything, especially since you haven't seen it. But that movie is not perfect either. That movie does like I would say if you're gonna go into that movie, you should watch all the Alien movies that you can. Stick, go without AVP, but like all the Alien like movies they've made, Ridley Scott,
mhm.
all of them, because they like it is faithful to the world that Alien that like Ridley Scott, James Cameron, and everybody like after it's faithful to the world they've set up. Like when you watch that movie, I think it's supposed to take place between Alien and Aliens, and it feels like it's in that world. Like it's got that retro futurism to it, right? The technology in the movie feels like it's the same technology you would expect to see in those other movies, which I think is kind of where like Star Wars half failed with the prequels, right? Because you're like, we're in the past, like 100 years or 50 years before Luke Skywalker's born, but everything looks way newer and cooler than anything we'll see in
Mhm.
those movies, right? But you see that, and I mean, it feels like a movie first, and there's things I disagree with in that film, but there's so many shots in that movie that are spectacular. Um, the way that the story unfolds, like it's nice to see. Like it's a movie that thrills you, right? And that's exactly what I wanted. Like I saw that movie for different reasons than I wanted to see Deadpool versus Wolverine, and it did not disappoint. I went and saw it in IMAX. I think I almost went and saw it on a smaller screen beforehand just to see it before anything got ruined for me. But I was reading after I watched the movie, I was talking about it with some friends, and then also like reading the trivia about it, and they talked about how after the success of Prey on Hulu, like 20th Century Fox had like greenlit this Alien Romulus, but they were initially going to release it on Hulu, and then changed their minds and decided to put it on the big screen. And I went, yeah. If you've seen Prey, um, that movie should have been seen on a big screen too. Like that movie is fucking awesome. It's like the best Predator movie since truly since like the first one.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, just it's unfortunate. Like the studios are like PG-13 is where the money is. It's like no, if you make like it helps too that they made Alien Romulus for I think under $100 million. Like that's the other part of that equation,
Yeah.
right? But so it has a chance to make its money back. fairly early on and whatnot, because you're not casting like that movie doesn't have really any known actors, and the director has had success, but he's like he directed the first Evil Dead remake, and then he directed a movie called Don't Breathe, which I
Uh-huh.
want to see because he's
I
directed
I
it.
loved it.
Oh,
So
really?
don't breathe. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Oh, no. So yeah. But I love what he did with the Evil Dead
And I liked Evil
franchise.
Dead too. Yeah.
And
Evil
like
Dead
what
as
was
well.
it,
I
a
mean, it's a
shot for shot remake like of the original Evil Dead. Like there's a lot of new stuff to be gained out of that movie. And then I
yeah,
feel like that
really
same
cool.
love for the Evil Dead he had for when he made Alien Romulus. Like it very much feels like Alien and Aliens at times, and it's that love of filmmaking, much like we talked about earlier. But
Hmm.
I think if you're okay, I think it's where we wrap it. Go see Alien Romulus. Subscribe to the new Ogden Cinema channel so you can be out there
Hmm.
with our number one fan Chet. Uh, and yeah, like there's plenty of movies out there. We appreciate it if you watch a few of ours and our playlists and what we've produced, and like, subscribe, and see all the other stuff we're gonna start putting out again here soon.
See the movies. Yeah.
Yeah.